Välkomna till Perspektiv TV. Idag kommer vi att ha en annorlunda intervju som kommer att gå både på engelska och på svenska. Vi kommer att prata om immigration. Vi kommer att prata om SIDA. Vi kommer att prata om NGOs. Och allt detta kommer vi att prata med Alexander Pohl. Alexander Pohl som tidigare har finansierat en hel del inom grön industri. Och grön industri och grön energi är nästan samma sak. Och det är det vi ska reda ut också i början. Och sen kommer vi att köra en diskussion med Alexander om vad som är bra eller vad som är dåligt med immigration. Vi kommer att titta på begreppet refugees, flyktingar, och vi kommer att diskutera lite grann vad en flykting är, eller rättare sagt vad en flykting inte är också. SIDA som sagt, vad gör de i samhället och i världen för att ha ett berättigande? Det är det vi ska prata lite kort om idag med Alexander Pohl.
Tack så mycket.
Välkommen.
Ja, välkommen.
Vem är Alexander Pohl?
Detta är en bra fråga. Who am I? I am a person who wants to help inform. And I have some very interesting information because of my life that I have lived. I have been in many countries, America, Australia, Germany, UK, and now Sweden. And I have traveled to many others. And I have a rich experience because I have done many different things. I studied engineering, I worked in insurance, I worked in finance, I worked with many different organizations, big companies and little companies. And then I woke up to wanting to live a better life and my best life. And as a result, I have a very unique, I think I have a very unique life. But my life is made up of many other people's lives. So I want to connect with other people and share my knowledge so that they can look at their own lives and recognize how it fits in. And then I want to reveal some truth, because I do feel that there is not so much truth in the world anymore. And a world without truth is a fantasy. And actually I think people should live a real life. That's what we are here for. And so I hope through our conversation and the other conversations that we have over the weeks and months, I can share a little bit of truth based on my real life and then help other people in their real lives.
Så vi kommer alltså att få prata om sanning, sanningssökande och fakta. Det är det vi ska prata om. Och det är det du kommer att bjuda oss på i framtiden också. Vi ska prata och börja med ordet immigration. Vad betyder det för dig?
Immigration is something that's very important to me because I have been an immigrant a number of times. A willing, a free, voluntary immigrant. And I was an immigrant because I wanted to join other societies and help to make them better, to invest myself into those, to add to the culture, to help people understand identity. You know, I took my identity with me. And of course, every time I went somewhere, I looked at the culture and wanted to help it be preserved. I grew up in the US, and while I was in the US, I was German in the US, but I also became a little American. Then I came back to Germany, and I became a German again. And for me, I feel that this word immigration has been weaponized. It has been used for political aims and to separate people, because ultimately we are all humans, but we are all unique individual humans with a history and a culture and a home. And ultimately, I think many of us are being forced from our homes. So immigration for me is actually three things, right? It is someone going from one country to another, from one culture to another. The three things are the motivations. So I am a voluntary or a purposeful immigrant. I have gone to another country in a way because I think that is the best place for me to be. But I go there wanting to make a home there, and part of that home is going into the new culture and taking that culture, mixing it with my old culture, and having two cultures in one place. Then in our society we have created opportunistic immigrants. So these are people who do not want to contribute to society, but they see another place where they can move and take. So I would say I'm a symbiotic immigrant. I'm going into a new society and together we are better. Then you get parasitic immigrants. These are people who are wanting to weaken the other society by taking from it without giving. And then the last, of course, are the involuntary immigrants. These are the refugees. These are people who would arguably go anywhere because their home, which is where they want to be, because it's where their friends, family, culture, history is, has been destabilized. And that's also what I want to talk about, is because destabilizing is really good business. And actually there is a system that has been developed by governments and corporations and individuals to create this instability. And then these people ultimately would like to go home because they are only taking temporary refuge. But if their home is never fixed, then they are always an involuntary immigrant, and that creates lots of friction and lots of unnecessary problems. And particularly when the host country doesn't integrate them into the society, they are like orphans, they are like homeless people. Even though they might be getting some benefits, if you don't give them the ability to become a symbiotic immigrant where both benefit, it's a terrible state of affairs. And I want to talk about the fact that in Sweden, the system has created an unreasonable number of parasitic immigrants and involuntary immigrants who are not allowed to go home because their home has been affected by Sweden and Sweden does not fix it.
Hur menar du här? Att Sverige som land har påverkat någonting så att de inte kan komma tillbaka till sina hemländer?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy in a way because we have something which is called international development. And international development is what we all feel good about, We live in Sweden or Germany or England, and our country has risen up, they say. So we are so much better off than the street children in India or the poor farmers in Ethiopia. But one has to always go back and say, why? Why are they so poor and we are so rich? And why do we keep sending tens of billions of SEK to these countries and they're not getting better? Something is going wrong in the system, And then when you look at it, and that's what we'll talk about in a great detail a bit later, is that there is this system. They're called non-governmental organizations, NGOs. They only exist for about 50 or 75 years. They are a new creation. But like with money laundering, they have become a tool for people to hide money and then, to sort of redirect it in ways that isn't fair. I give you one example. A Swedish person gives to charity. They expect that money to go to Ethiopia to build, new schools. But the money doesn't always get there. often it gets, some of it gets taken for salaries, some of it gets taken for local things, and then actually often the money never ever makes it to where it was supposed to go.
Kanske bara ett fåtal procent av pengarna som kommer fram.
Oh, some people say it's as much as 80% never makes it.
80%?
Sometimes. And if you look at it, it kind of makes sense because we have been paying billions to Ethiopia, and Ethiopia has never been worse. Or let's look at Yemen. Yemen, it's awful what is happening there. We keep giving money, but why is it not getting better? And then you start to see stories of a Swedish company selling an arms factory to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is suspected or known to give weapons to the rebels in Yemen. So Sweden is profiting from a continued conflict in Yemen. And of course, let's not forget, because we keep sending money there are local organizations which keep getting fed. And so you don't want that to stop because it's not good for business. It's amazing for people though. And this is what makes me angry.
Så att pengarna som man bidrar med till olika hjälpverksamheter runt om i världen, från frivilligorganisationer eller som jag sitter och kikar på här, SIDA.
Yes.
Vad är det som gör att så mycket pengar försvinner på vägen?
Yeah.
Och det gäller inte bara frivilliga organisationer, även SIDA.
So exactly. So SIDA, we have to define it. It is the Swedish International Development Agency. It is the arm of the myndighet. Well, is it a myndighet? But it's the Swedish government taking people's taxes that should be paying for first education, old people, unemployed in Sweden. It's taking this money and sending it to places where a Swedish person doesn't even know what happens to it. And what I have found is that SIDA gives lots of money to NGOs based in Stockholm, and these NGOs then give that money to other NGOs in these places like Ethiopia or Yemen.
Så du menar att det här är ett slags pyramidspel?
Yes. It is,
där man plockar delar av detta för att plocka bort från det målet?
Yeah, and they mix it together with money from corporations and companies. And they mix it together with money from foundations and family offices. But this money always has conditions. I will give you this money, but this is the message you need to deliver locally.
Så det är alltså villkorat?
Yeah. So this is how they have influenced the world and governments and people's minds. Because a Swedish NGO, there are many of them, they usually are called Swedish or Stockholm, you can Google them. They do not actually do anything. They are like thinkers or planners or strategists. They come up with the strategy and then they find a local NGO who is happy to get money, because these NGOs, there is no money locally. They depend on international NGOs to help them. They then get instructions. I will give you 5,000 SEK, 50,000 SEK, 500,000 SEK for your activity. And I'm not saying that the activity is not sometimes good. There are many NGOs that maybe will finance an orphanage. But then you have to look at, they fund the orphanage, but they then say you must teach the children this, or you must do that. So there are conditions. And it could be anything from the books they need to learn from, to medical things, to what they have to have, you must make sure that they have a computer or a laptop. These are children. The first thing that they probably need to do is have imaginative and creative freedom to sort of play. No, I want them to have a computer so that they can look at the internet. these children, they don't need the internet. They need freedom and good health and so forth. So they are shaping these children, and if it, I hate to use the word, but if it was with the pedophiles, we call it grooming. They are shaping them for their purposes. And we're finding that actually many NGOs are influencing the way that you think. If you keep seeing images of poor children in Yemen, you are just going to think of poor children in Yemen. You may not actually ask yourself, why are these poor children in Yemen? And who is to blame? Because they will say, oh, it's the local rebels or whatnot. But where did the local rebels get their guns? Where did the local rebels get their money? And then you have to follow. So we live in a world now where the pyramid is all about hiding things, hiding the truth. And that's what I want to talk about.
Så vi ska alltså prata om kunskap. Och sen bygger vi kunskapen bit för bit.
Yeah.
För att kunna förstå helheten i slutet.
Yeah.
Och det är det vi kommer att prata om nu några program framåt. Och du kommer att vara gäst här i studion de gånger som vi ska prata om just de här pyramiderna med kunskap. Men du pratar också om hemska saker som händer med ungdomar. Jag såg någonstans att du pratar om att människor försvinner på vägen när de här NGOsen kommer in i sammanhangen. Och även myndigheter som finns med någonstans. Människor försvinner på vägen som är flyktingar. Och hur tänker du här?
Of course, if you're a refugee, you are grateful for anyone to take you. And, it's great that there is a network that can take you. But based on, basic research that I've done in Sweden, based on learning, as an immigrant, I came here 2 years ago because I thought Sweden was the perfect society. I wanted to live in nature. There's lots of nature. I wanted to live in a place where I thought the government served the people and took care of the things that I worry about, so I don't need to worry about them. But, I looked into many things. I looked into everything from children disappearing, the number of refugee children disappearing. And then you see very interesting things. Lots of immigrant children disappear. Where do they go? In Sweden? Surely you can't have some type of child trafficking in Sweden. But then I looked, and then I heard stories about the social services in Sweden and how, based on, I worked in a bank, I read lots of legal language. There seems to be a contract between the government and parents. And the way you read it is that the government owns your children and they pay you 2,000 SEK every month to look after them. I always wondered, why does the government pay everyone, 2,000 SEK per child? They're paying you because you're an employee. You're looking after their children for them. So there were lots of structures in Sweden that when I was looking at being an immigrant and the fight, because, they politicized immigration. They say AFS and the Sweden Democrats are Nazis because they're questioning immigration. And many of them I spoke to, and they said, no, we're not against immigration or taking refugees, but we're against bad government-led immigration. Because as I've learned, an immigrant comes into Sweden, they don't get to choose where they go. They get sent to, Krokom in the north of Sweden. Krokom Kommun is almost bankrupt. The government said, I will give you 1 million SEK per immigrant. The kommun says, how many can I get? Because they turned a refugee into currency. He's worth 1 million.
Så du menar att den här att det här är en flyktingindustri?
Ja. Ja.
Och även en lite värre än så. Att man missbrukar de här flyktingarna när de kommer. Att de hamnar i tråkiga situationer, rent ut sagt.
Yeah.
I klorna på människor som inte vill dem speciellt väl.
Yeah.
Och det är det vi ska prata om i fortsättningen. Så detta samtal vi har idag är egentligen bara början på någonting som kommer att pratas om i ett större sammanhang.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is that the subject it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So you have to approach it step by step. You know, I'm not saying that there aren't communes that care about the refugees. I'm not saying that there aren't refugees who aren't treated well. But if you look at the system as a whole, how could Sweden go from the safest country in Europe to the highest rate of murders, bombs, rapes, when supposedly Sweden has been getting better and better? It doesn't happen by accident. And as I'm learning through the wind power, which was my entrance, that many things in Sweden have happened by design. The government policy has led us to a place where suddenly we need more police. You know, I've been abducted by the police. I know what the police are like, and I had a very good conversation that they took something that was amazing. Police are to protect the people and to ensure the safety of the people, and they weaponized the police to become a tool of the government. And, you know, I had a great conversation with someone, and he said, look, there are 3 types of police. The real police, the people who went and said, look, my job in life is to help people and to keep them safe. He said that's 1/3. That's the old police. Then he said there is 1/3 of the police which have become, I don't know how to describe them, people who like power. You know, this is a drug that corrupts people. It was in my bank, it's in the communes, it's in the Riksdag. People who get high on power. And a police person has a lot of power in Sweden. So there's 1/3. And then in recent years, and this is not conspiracy, this is fact, the government has changed the policy about who can become a police officer. And they made the tests a lot easier, and they also introduced some things so that they wouldn't discriminate against people with mental health issues. You know, if you have a mental health problem, you probably shouldn't be a police officer because it's very high stress. And then they introduced what I would say the corporatization of policing. They do this in many countries. You know, a police officer has targets. You must issue so many tickets. You must arrest so many people, you know. And the police, like many people, are slaves to the system. You know, if you're a police officer, well, what else can you do? There aren't so many jobs, so you're grateful to be a police officer. But they keep paying you less. And then you have your mortgage on your house and the payments on your car. If you lose your job, you lose everything. So again, they start creating this environment. So you see the refugee issue suddenly became a police issue. And then suddenly you see the government saying, Sweden is so unsafe, we need to hire 10,000 more police. But 10,000 more police when you know that 2/3 are not real police.
Menar du på att, om jag har förstått det rätt, att den svenska polisen håller på att utbildas till en politisk polis?
Yeah. And what I want to do is I want to give people little pieces, because, you know, it's very difficult to accept that the police that you know, trust and love and grew up having faith in, that you can only trust 1/3 of them. And because they all look the same, how do you know which policeman that you can trust? You know, and that's an insult to the good police.
Så då menar du på att 2/3 av den svenska polisen kan man inte lita på?
Okay, we need to be a little bit careful, because those 2/3 are still people. You know, they are probably inside still good people, but their behavior is unacceptable. And you can see it more and more. You know, it's the treatment of people, let's say even when they're doing their freedom of speech and protesting. I was in a Stockholm restaurant, a bar. Someone did something. The ordningsvakter, which is not the police, you know, they are the new private police.
Yeah, private police.
Private police. You know, this guy, yeah, he bumped someone, but they beat him. They beat him to the ground. And then he got arrested. You know, there is something seriously wrong when someone who bumps into another person, who happens to be an ordningsvakt, outside of a bar, gets beaten to the ground, and then the police take him away, and the ordningsvakt, they just get left alone. I'm not saying that the ordningsvakt are all bad people. I'm just saying that the system has been created that it doesn't function the way that we want it to.
Så då menar du på att ordningsvakterna håller också på att bli politiska?
Yeah.
Är det du säger?
Yeah. I don't want to say it.
Nej.
Men it's faktiskt. And we need to look at all the things in our system that have become politisk. You know.
Alexander, jag vet om att du vill prata mycket mer om det här.
Indeed.
Yeah. Och vi ska göra det också. Men inte idag. Det är nämligen så att denna lilla intervju på cirka drygt 20 minuter kommer att bli ett flertal program framöver där Alexander kommer att få diskutera politiska frågor när det gäller hur vi hanterar politiskt refugeesfrågan. Och vi kommer att prata om immigration och vi kommer att prata om NGOs och vi kommer att prata om statliga organisationer. Som då, där pengar försvinner iväg och där vi politiserar olika verksamheter i Sverige. Ni kommer att få höra lite nya grejer här framöver och Alexander, jag ser fram emot att få intervjua dig lite längre nästa gång. Men detta blev en liten teaser.
Ja.
Och jag hoppas att ni där ute tycker det är intressant. För att det kommer att bli väldigt, väldigt mycket nyheter från Alexander. Och med de orden tillbaka till studion.